Okay, we're here with David Hitt and Kathryn Crowe today. How you doing?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. So, Kathryn, I understand you've worked with on the RJ25 engine. Can you tell me about little about the engine and how it fits in with the SLS?
Sure. The RS-25 engine is a space shuttle main engine derivative that we're using to be able to leverage previous heritage assets that we had, but still help take us further and farther than we've ever been before in manned spaceflight. So at the end of the shuttle program, we had 16 engines left over. So at the current time, we're in the process of retrofitting those engines with new controllers and running them through a test program down at Stennis Space Flight Center to qualify them for use on the first few SLS flights. And then once we've used those engines, we will be using new, what we're calling production restart RS-25 engines that will be rebuilt on new assembly lines through Aerojet Rocketdyne in California to power the next stage of our SLS flight. So we have more than 30 years of experience with these engines and over 1 million seconds of successful hot fire with them. So they're proven to be a very reliable, very efficient propulsion method for large launch vehicles such as the SLS. In fact, a single turbopump on a single engine puts out more horsepower than 400 Toyota Priuses, and we'll have 4 engines on each launch vehicle. So it's a pretty cool piece of hardware at the end of the day.
Awesome. What technological challenges do you foresee going forward, and how will the SLS evolve as the program progresses?
So I'll start with the evolution plan for SLS. So something we're very concentrated on at this time at NASA is how to not only do amazing and huge things in spaceflight, but be able to do them in a way that gets the biggest bang for the buck out of the taxpayer dollar. So at the same time that we're trying to come up with a revolutionary launch vehicle, we're working very hard to figure out how to do it affordably. So the plan that was determined using those 2 criteria is to, as much as we can, continue to do the things that we know how to do well with the new launch vehicle. So for instance, like we have solid rocket boosters that flew on shuttle. We're using RS-25s that are a space shuttle main engine derivative. We're using a lot of technology that's previously existing, like the upper for both the ICPS, which is for the Block 1 upper stage, and the future configuration upper stage, the EUS. Those are using established propulsion methods and technologies and tanking methods and technologies, but optimized for the future launch vehicle. So for the first flight, the rocket configuration will consist of a core stage with 4 RS-25s, 2 solid rocket boosters that are the same as the shuttle boosters, an interim cryogenic propulsion stage, which we call the ICPS, and MPCV, which contains the Orion crew capsule. So that's known as the Block 1 configuration, and that's what will fly on the first flight. And then after that, we'll start transitioning to a configuration that it's essentially the same bottom part of the rocket. So it's the same core stage, the same solid rocket boosters, but we'll have a different, more high-powered upper stage that'll be able to take us out of low Earth orbit and on our initial lunar missions, as well as be able to launch payload on what we call a Europa Clipper mission. Which is, you can see in the last budget, there was a lot of funding that got given to that particular Europa mission. So that all ties in together. And then further on down the road, in a much longer time frame, we plan to not only have the upgraded upper stage, but we'll also have, I just lost my earpiece, we'll also have upgraded advanced boosters, the shape of which we don't know exactly what those are going to look like right now, but there's active research programs that we have running to try to figure out what those will look like. So essentially what we're going to be doing is instead of launching a massive development program all at once that's very cost heavy on the front, we're distributing the cost of the launch program over many years while still making incremental advances, not unlike what we did during the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo days, where if you go back and you actually study the history of that, the launch, even during the Apollo program itself, the launch vehicle itself went through several changes, even though the mission profiles were somewhat the same. So we're taking a very similar approach for SLS.
A really neat thing to come out of that is, like Kat said, with the Block 1 vehicle, the initial version of the vehicle, we have just been hitting the ground running to get this thing on the launch pad. The goal is we want the United States, we want the world to have this sort of heavy lift capability as quickly as possible. Let's do everything we can to get it on the launch pad. As we're looking at the downstream versions of the vehicle, the evolved versions of the vehicle, we kind of have this unique challenge of we're having to do work today to make sure that a rocket that we're going to fly, 10, 15 years from now for the evolved version is still cutting edge, is still state of the art that long from now. And I mean, the way technology changes, that's a serious challenge. And so part of what we're doing to make that happen is we're doing kind of the long lead technology work. We're using the mature stuff for Block 1, but we're taking the little bit further out there concepts and playing with those and maturing those and developing those for the evolved version. And so some of that's kind of very aerospace industry focused. We're doing, 3D printing of rocket engine parts. We're doing new techniques for friction stir welding to build the structures that benefits not only SLS, but it benefits our partners that we're able to share that technology with. But then there's also like the really fun stuff. We did a blog, you can look this up, about ultra capacitors. Right? Capacitors are kind of an alternative to batteries, basically. A wonderful technology, but they didn't meet the demands of what we needed for spaceflight purposes. So we're going in and we're doing this research to 3D print better ultra capacitors. I mean, so we're kind of doing this, a little bit of this cool technology and a little bit of that cool technology and bringing them together to make something even better. And that's something that not only benefits us, and that not only benefits the industry, but that's something that has the potential to pan out so that, 5 years from now, your cell phone or something is more improved because of the technology development work we're doing for SLS. So excited about what it means for the rocket, but also just, I'm excited about what it's going to mean for consumers, for the general public.
Awesome. So what elements are you working on right now?
So is everything a valid answer?
Everything.
And I'm only half joking about that. So there's essentially one of the really exciting things about, especially like what we're going to be doing in 2016, is we're really moving into the hardware construction phase for the first flight. So we've got stage adapters that are built. If you ever get a chance to go down to Michoud and get a tour of the factory floor down there, there's huge hardware everywhere. So we've got parts of the core stage that are built, the ICPS, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage is well underway. We're getting ready to roll into our second test series for RS-25 down at Stennis. So and the exciting part about that is the first test series we did in 2015, that was on, it's the same engine, but it's a specific engine that's labeled as test hardware. In 2016, we'll actually be hot running the first set of flight engines. So that's pretty exciting. So when you see those pictures of those engines running, those will be the ones that fly on the first vehicle. The crew capsule is, it's already undergone several test flights and it's essentially ready. And so there's all sorts of, actual flight hardware being built, but we're also in the process of doing lots of, as David talked about, technology demonstration work. So, and sometimes like when you're looking at launch vehicles, it's real easy to just focus on the parts that make fire because, it's not like fire's awesome. That's really cool. But there's also tons of hands-on hardware work being done on things like composite structures, which is always tricky. You know, composites are much lighter than metal. So we, as much as possible, we want to move to composites, but you have to be really careful about how you apply those. So that means lots of test layups and lots of research done on that. So, you know, so there's just lots of hardware work that's being done currently, which is really exciting. But we're also, we're actively working a lot of the future conceptual design and development to, you know, because you can't, when you're doing something like a Mars mission, you can't just plan for the next 5 years. Like you're really planning for the next 30 years all at the same time. So even though we're doing this hardware work for the first flight, we're actively doing conceptual development for things like habitation modules, in the order in which we might want to deliver things to Mars, and like really starting to get into the nitty gritty of the operations concept for the entire, like the next few decades, which is pretty exciting. So there's just lots of really neat work going on.
Yeah, so for somebody watching this later, we're doing this interview in early January of 2016. And so January is the time you make your New Year's resolutions. So if I were to give you our New Year's resolutions for 2016 for SLS, like Kathryn said, we're going to be doing engine testing. We're putting flight engine in the test stand. We're going to see how an engine that flew on space shuttle handles the unique loads, the unique stresses of being on SLS. Number two, like she said, we're going to be maturing the design. What are the new RS-25s that we're going to be flying on EM5, EM6, and thereafter, what changes are we going to make? We're going to mature those changes, that development. We are going to do our final qualification test for the solid rocket booster, getting it ready to fly. We are going to see the test articles for the tanks for core stage coming out of my shoe assembly facility. They'll be coming up here to Huntsville. So for those of us that, you know, I grew up here, I grew up in the Rocket City. The fact that we're going to see giant pieces of rocket in the Rocket City again, you know, soon and very soon is a little bit cool. I'm just a wee bit excited about that. You'll see us doing loads testing, structural testing for the kind of informally we call it the upper stage elements of the vehicle, the adapters, the second stage, and then the adapter out to Orion. We're going to be doing compression testing with that, making sure that all those pieces are ready for the stresses of launch, and then you'll be seeing us do maturation, kind of some technology development for the next upper stage. And so 2016 is going to be a really exciting time, and I say that 2017 is going to be a really exciting time. 2018 is going to be a really exciting time, but we're going to have some stuff going on this year that's really going to show how real, how big, and how powerful this launch vehicle is. So keep watching because some exciting stuff is coming up.
Well, and it's also sort of an interesting transition time, because in the years leading up to this, the majority of our focus has been on getting to the first flight. Well, now we're getting into the hardware phase for the first flight, and we're also starting to really put a lot of effort into the second flight. Yeah. So we're starting to get rolling into it actually being a multiple launch program. Yeah. So it's changing in nature, and there's a pretty incredible air of excitement around the center right now. There's just so much going on. The skyline of Huntsville actually changed with the new test stands we built to test the tanks that he mentioned coming out of Michoud. Huntsville's neat in that on the skyline, you can actually see the tops of the Saturn and shuttle era test stands that we have here. And so for the first time in 30 years, the skyline changed again, and we now have 2 new test stands that are going to provide all of the structural load testing that we need for SLS, because prior to that, we actually didn't have anything big enough to hold and load test these tanks. So it's a pretty exciting time.
Awesome. So what do you guys think of eventual one-way missions to Mars and private projects like Mars One?
I do this job because I'm excited about humans going out to deep space, human beings walking on Mars. I mean, that is the fact that I have a job where I get to wake up in the morning and I get to come to work and I'm helping to make that happen is that's a cool thing. You know, that gets you going in the morning. And so I want to see it happen. I want to see human beings walking on Mars, and I'm doing what I'm doing because I want to see that happen. But anybody else that's working to make that happen, man, I'm excited about what you're doing on that day. You know, when I turn on my TV or whatever we're using instead of TV on that day, and I'm watching a human being walk on Mars. Yeah, I mean, what's going to be going through my head is not, oh, you know, which program put them there. It's going to be, there's a person on Mars. I mean, like, there's somebody on Mars. So that's great. And the thing that I really love is there are those of us who love this, who are passionate about this, that have been kind of, you know, almost lone voices in the wilderness sort of thing. I mean, you know, 20 years ago, if you said, oh, I want to see people on Mars, you were kind of a nerd, you know? But today, because of the work we're doing, because of the work that our partners like SpaceX and Boeing and others are doing, because of the work that people like Mars One and Inspiration Mars have been doing, the public is, we're all nerds today, right? The public is getting excited about this. People are saying, yeah, we want to see this happen. So anything that gets the public excited about Mars, and anything that gets us a day closer to Mars, yeah, that's a good day, you know?
Well, and two, at the end of the day, I know, you know, there's always going to be some controversy around a one-way mission, but the way exploration has unfolded over the entire human history, like really, if you look back to like the European explorers even, there's a difference in how you plan a mission if it's a publicly funded mission versus what you do as a sole individual and how you approach the mission. So like David said, like the second like anyone's actually headed towards Mars, that's an incredible day in my lifetime, no matter who it is. But we have certain responsibilities as NASA that if we're going to send someone, we have to bring them back safely. That's always been a rule for us. But if someone else chooses that they want to go on a one-way mission to Mars, then that's their personal life choice, and I'm going to be equally as excited just to know that we were able to get someone there. And it's all a step in learning. And I think one of the cool things about where we are in this industry now, that's a lot different from where we've been in previous decades, is like David was saying, there's just so much conversation, and there's so many ideas, and there's so many people invested in wanting to see space flight not become routine, but become something that's, you know, sort of a part of everyone's daily lives. Like, and that's very different. You know, I remember growing up, like we had shuttle, but it was still very much a government run, like space flight was a government endeavor. And to see it become now something where private investors actually want to put their money into accomplishing these goals, I think it's a very necessary part of the equation. And I'm excited to see where it takes us, and the ideas that come out of the private industry that, you know, because the way the problem gets solved is it's usually not the, you know, like all the great inventions and discoveries and innovations in history, a large majority of them came slightly by accident. You know, like they were trying to answer a specific question, and in the process they've got, you know, they discovered this other new thing that took them to this new place that really enabled the initial goal they were looking at. So I think it's fantastic that there's so many people sitting down, even as a hobby, and trying to solve this, you know, really difficult endeavor that we've all set out on.
Awesome. So, what's NASA's current strategy for educating the public about the journey to Mars?
Well, so before you get into that, just to back up a little bit, how are we getting to Mars? What are we doing? What does that look like? And we kind of, as an agency, have outlined kind of a three-part approach with this idea of being Earth dependent, going into the proving ground of space, becoming Mars ready, becoming Earth independent, and those are the kind of fancy terms. It's really any trip you take is kind of a three-part thing. You are here, you want to be there, you got to get there. The you are here is where we are today. You know, we have an International Space Station that's orbiting the Earth. We have people living and working in space every minute of every day for the last 15 years. We have, you know, commercial cargo capability already developed. Commercial crew is coming along rapidly, getting ready. And so these robotically, we are on Mars. I mean, you go to the robotic sciences people and say, you know, hey, we want to go to Mars. They said, we did that 50 years ago. We've been doing it pretty much ever since. So we're taking advantage of those assets that we have, of being able to, like we're doing with the one-year crew right now, learn about what it's like to learn in space longer, to deal with the kind of the unique weightlessness exposure issues that you deal with the Mars rovers. You know, I mean, just recently we learned more about liquid water flowing on Mars right now. And so those things that we can do where we are right now are going to help us get ready. Over on the other end of the spectrum, you know, here's Mars, and it's exciting, but it's kind of foreboding. I mean, the challenges of getting there, you're going to have to spend long periods of time in space. The entire time you're doing that, the sun is desperately trying to kill you, spitting radiation at you. You get to Mars, and just the process of getting from space to the surface is incredibly challenging, incredibly difficult. You know, with Curiosity, we had the 7 minutes of terror. We were doing that to put 1 ton on the surface of Mars. To have people, you're talking about, you know, 20 to 40 tons landing on the surface of Mars. We got to learn how to do that. Once you get on the surface of Mars, you know, back in the early 70s, there was a guy. He was not necessarily a planetary geologist, not a planetary climatologist, but he did a serious research about what the climate of Mars was like, and he reported back that Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids, right? You know, I mean, Elton John is a pop singer, but even he gets it. Okay, there's no Walmart there, there's no Starbucks there. It's going to be difficult to live there. And so these are challenges that we've got to overcome. And so what we're doing in the meantime, what we're doing at the proving ground is learning how to meet those challenges. You know, let's figure out how to keep people not in Earth orbit, but in deep space for long periods of time, have them exposed to that sort of radiation environment and keep them alive, keep them healthy. Let's figure out how to not only build these habitats in deep space, but let's figure out how to move large stuff like that through the solar system to get it from one planet to another. And so those are the challenges that you're going to see us tackling during the 2020s primarily, is just figuring out those puzzles to get ready to do that. So how do we communicate that? Stuff like this, man, when people want to talk to us about Mars, we will be glad to talk to you about Mars. So we appreciate people like you they'll take the time and have these conversations with us. But the biggest thing that we want to communicate to people is this is not just an idea. This is not just a plan. We've been talking about Mars. People have been talking about Mars for a very long time. I mean, back in the 50s, Wernher von Braun went on Disney's Tomorrowland program and talked about going to Mars. And it's a very interesting thing to talk about, but we're doing it. For the first time in human history, we've moved from talking about it to doing it. We are right now bending metal, building the structures for a rocket designed for Mars. We are right now doing the welds, putting together the pressure vessel of a human crew vehicle designed for going to Mars. We are right now conducting the renovations at Kennedy Space Center to make it a multi-generation spaceport that can support not only the heavy lift exploration class rockets, but also the the commercial vehicles. They're going to make possible the research that we're doing in low Earth orbit in the near term to make this possible. And so that would be the biggest thing that I think we're trying to communicate to the public, that we really want people to know and to hear, is that it's not talk, it's not a plan, it's not an idea. This is reality. This is happening right now. We are not planning a journey to Mars. We are on a journey to Mars.
And I think too, social media is a huge asset too, and especially now that we're getting into the hardware phase and we do have pretty pictures to show. But I think we always try to make a good use of things like Twitter and Facebook and even Reddit. For those of you out there who use Reddit, we do a lot of AMAs on Reddit when we have cool stuff to talk about. So I think in general, like, we're just trying to keep the conversation open with the public. And for anyone who's watching the video, I would, if you do want to, learn more about Mars or communicate with us, feel free to contact like any of the NASA Twitter feeds, or any of us like ourselves on Twitter, or go on the SLS Facebook or the Orion Facebook. There's a lot of places. And it used to be in the past, like, NASA would put out public releases, but there wasn't good venues for communication back to NASA. But through the use of social media, if you have ideas or you have specific questions, or you want to know, feel free to actually start a conversation with us. And, you may not get the center director answering your reply on there, but if nothing else, there's at least forums to have those sorts of space discussions now that I think are pretty cool. And like David was saying, something that I think we're trying and doing a much better job about communicating too is that, the stuff that's going on the ISS is not distinct from the SLS mission. Right. So when you hear about, the year in space and the astronauts, like, actually, which is the longest we've ever had a single person in space, when they're doing that, that's all very connected. So all that, it's really a combined effort. So we're just doing the best we can to try to get our achievements out there on all venues possible.
Yeah. I will say, I was giving a talk one time. I was out talking to some college kids, and at the end of it, any questions? And this one kid raises his hand and says, "Man, I tell you what, if I had $1 million to help make this happen, I would do it." And I said, thank you, I appreciate it, but A, you don't have $1 million, and B, honestly, $1 million is not going to make or break any of the Mars programs. But 1 million voices, okay, that changes things. I when I'm talking to people, even in the space community, okay, when was the last time you went out and talked about Mars? Have you talked about Mars to somebody in the last week? And the average person, no. I said, you want to make it, if you want to do something, something easy, but something concrete to help make this happen. In our case, go on Twitter, NASA_SLS. Go on Facebook/NASA SLS. Our website, nasa.gov/SLS. We have an Instagram, Explore NASA. But just go on our Twitter, go on our Facebook, and just hit retweet every once in a while. It's the simplest thing, but you're taking what we're saying and you're helping us reach, hundreds, thousands more people. There's two of us here talking. When this video is posted, we share this video. You hear us, you hear two people talking about it, you hit retweet, okay, now 100 more people just heard about that. Now, those people hit retweet, okay, now we've got 1,000 people saying what we just said. It's the easiest thing, but it's the click that changes the world. Almost is kind of melodramatic, but it's kind of not untrue. So, that's the easiest, quickest way to kind of be a part of this and join us in making Mars happen.
Awesome. So that's about all I've got. Anything you'd like to add?
I think I just want to say that, for anyone who's watching this video, you know, you're probably equally as interested in commercial as government, so you're probably more friendly to this idea. But Mars is hard. Space flight is hard. We're going to have, you know, failures and obstacles along the way. There's going to be times that we have tests that go south, but that's actually why we test, is because you'd much rather have that happen on a test than on a flight, and there's just things we can't model. So bear with us and be patient with us, and just know that on our side of the equation, you know, we're equally as determined as we've ever been to make this mission. And I'm losing my earpiece again, so I won't be able to hear you, Heidi. But we're equally as determined as we've ever been to make this happen. And we're, you know, I'm fortunate enough to be on the team now that's working not the first flight, but the flights that come after that. And we're our team, like the team that I'm personally involved with, like we're very determined to do everything in our power to make it a reality. And we're also being very conscientious of learning what we can from the commercial and private companies that are coming up, not just their technology, but the approaches that they're taking to managing the spaceflight process, and places that they are faster, quicker, and better than we've been in the past. So keep an eye on us, because I think this is very much a real program, and we very much have real hardware, and I think it's very achievable. I don't see anything in the near future that makes this mission impossible at all. So I'm very excited about the next few decades.
Yeah. What she said, you know, is after the last space shuttle flight landed, there were people there's this kind of general attitude that, you know, oh, space is over, NASA is over, you know, it's done because NASA's not launching the space shuttle anymore, because we're not seeing the big things launch anymore. We're sitting here right now on the cusp, and we've been kind of talking about it from an SLS perspective, because that's where we sit. But from a NASA perspective, you know, you're going to see 3 new NASA crew vehicles launching on new American launch vehicles coming up in the next couple of years. And so we're not only having, you know, a new NASA launch vehicle, we have a new American fleet of astronaut launch vehicles. That's kind of insane in a way. I mean, that's crazy exciting. So really, over the next couple of years, you're going to see that, you know, the people that were saying, oh, is NASA dead? You know, NASA's not dead. We're just getting started. I mean, the golden age is not behind us. It's what you're going to see happening in the next few years. So stay tuned and join us on the journey. Thank you.
Thank you.